The forbidden Acropolis of Athens and the hidden entrances. Well, most of the ancients knew the hidden entrances because the Acropolis of each city was where they had to flee in times of danger. It was a sort of a fortress, the top of the hill, and they would quickly get into these hidden entrances, which the enemies didn't know of course. And from what I know, as I've told you many times before, my parents were architects and they went to the Polytechnic School of Athens, and they knew of these entrances. So the architects knew of these entrances. Now, the history of the Acropolis is relatively well known. Both textbooks, travel guides, and archaeological treatises usually refer extensively to the time and manner of construction of the complex of glorious buildings of this sacred rock. However, there are few to no references to its nature and its less visible points, which are always ignored or silenced by everyone. The view that the Acropolis as a whole, but especially the Parthenon, is full of secrets is the closest to reality. The late professor of archaeology, Panagiotis Kavadias, was the first to propose the theory of the solid foundation of the Parthenon. The general excavations that had begun to take place in the area of the imposing monument during the years 1885 to 1890, but also the previous ones from 1844, strengthened the theory to the fullest, and since then the image of the surface of the Acropolis has undergone successive changes. Today, the most serious and only visible presumption of Cavadia's opinion is at the bottom of the abyss on the southwest side of the Parthenon. There is an ancient narrow marble staircase, the direction of which leads clearly below the temple of Athena. Everyone can imagine what it ends up without seeing the other end of it, since the responsible contractors are provided to block the continuation of the corridor with cube-shaped concrete volumes. Another abyss located behind the Erection to the south, where the ancient sloping level that served as the entrance to the Acropolis is preserved, at its lower point between the Pelasgian and the later wall, another enigmatic vertical opening closed with heavy, now oxidized railings like the basement air ducts. As for the Erection, the place where it was built, has its own mysterious history. At that point, according to tradition, Poseidon hit the ground with his trident and water immediately gushed out. This legend is confirmed by Pausanias in historical times. In Attica, he mentions that in the time in which he lived, every time winds blew in Athens from the south, on the Acropolis, and especially from a well under Erection, water splashes were heard. The strange thing about this testimony is that the water of that well did not come from a spring, but directly from the sea, which is, a good 10 kilometers away from the Acropolis. If anything else, this information indicates the existence of an underground tunnel that led to the south coast of Attica. What other explanation could be given for the presence, even today, of small seashells and clams in the crevices of the rocks and in the small ditches below the point where the Erection dominates? According to other information, this hidden tunnel starts from Castella of Piraeus and ends at the holy rock of the Acropolis. There's also evidence that during the Turkish occupation, when the Erection was used as the residence of the Ottoman commander of the Acropolis, this well functioned as a sewer. Let it not be forgotten that the beliefs of the ancients wanted the Erection to be inhabited by Erechtheus, Erichthonius, and the Ekuron Ophim of Athena. At the same time, inside it was the tomb of Kekropos and the Dipedos of Athena. Are these all myths, or is it a covert knowledge? Outside of the propyla, the gate in the western part, we observe a stone staircase that leads to a lower level in front of a wooden door. Inside, there was an elongated chamber whose left wall and part of the floor have collapsed. It's obvious that this is the corridor that led underground to the oil deposit used by the ancient priests to keep the flame of Athena in the Erection. Most likely, however, it was an entrance to inland apartments. Similarly, on the east side of the entrance of the Propylae, the two-story church of Apteros Niki, the Winged Victory, is not without mystery, as it is unknown that it hid it in its underground spaces, of which today only two half-sealed marble openings can be seen. Curiosity is exacerbated by the presence of a funnel with a triangularly carved spout on the rock a few meters below. This small trench, with the dimensions of a manhole, is located in the same imaginary straight line with the temple of Apteros Niki, and its direction is directed below it. Of course, it's not the only one, since around the holy rock of the Acropolis there are a number of caves of different dimensions, each of which hides its own secrets. Walking around the slopes of the sacred rock of the Acropolis, we reach the north side, where our attention is distracted by a pavilion with dimensions of a pavilion both masterfully carved, as well as the semicircular, also carved into the rock, seat inside. Apparently, in ancient times, it served as an outpost or as a resting place for hikers. To the right and left of the courtyard, there are two more openings blocked with sheet metal. These are caves of unspecified depth that are used today as warehouses of materials and tools for the construction sites that operate there. And below, climbing an ancient spiral staircase, we reach the Cave of Lavros with the characteristic thyroid opening, in which, and strangely, only 300 of pigeons nest. Tradition says that Agravlos, daughter of King Kekropas, when the city of Athens was besieged by the forces of King of Eleusis, named Eumolpus, committed suicide by falling from the walls of the Acropolis at that point in order to verify, according to which the self-sacrifice of a princess would save Athens from conquest. Citizens dedicated the cave to her to honor her memory. Now, the area of the cave is located just below the house of the Auriforos, that is, the young virgins who took part in the awarding ceremony to the greatness of the Athenian heroine during special events that had now been instituted. The narrowness of the width of the cave contrasting with the impressive height, but also its great depth, give it a slit-like shape, giving the impression that it's a large underground gorge. In its deepest part, it's the beginning of a dark ditch. The Cave of Lavros is one of the most mysterious places of the Acropolis. This is primarily because opinions about the identity are divided, and secondly because of its great depth and its tunnel extension beyond the foot of the Acropolis. In many manuals that have been written about the history of the Acropolis of Athens during the 19th and 20th centuries, but also in modern ones, this cave is a shield-shaped entrance, is mentioned without a special name, while the Cave of Agravlos is the big cave dominating the northeast side. But the combination of existing data and historical information does not seem to strongly support this view. This large cave was probably known as the Cave of Lavros by Manolis Glezos and Apostolos Santas when presenting their testimonies for the removal of the Nazi flag from the Acropolis the night of May 31st, 1941. They said that they threw it into a pedestal which was connected with the Cave of Lavros, from where, according to tradition, the sacred snake of Athena entered. However, given that the Ikuros office of Pallada lived in the Erection, which is closest to the thyroid cave, and that the house of the Auriforos, who honored the memory of Lavros, is also close to the same cave, the conclusions are clear and obvious. The interior of the cave is even more interesting, as from the deepest point of its bottom begins a long tunnel that passes under the foot of the holy rock, joins another tunnel. Starting from this point, the direction to the left leads underground to Areospagos and Nika, while the right portico reaches the center of Athens, just below the Constitution Square. So in the basement of this small temple, there's the old catacomb with the exit from the tunnel, none other than the holy table of the temple, under the cover of which are still the metal rings for pulling the marble floor outwards. This gallery, no longer accessible, is of unique historical importance as it was used by the revolutionary fighters and their monks to popular comrades in order to transport, without being noticed, the quantities of gunpowder stolen from Turkish occupiers. Now, the Arios Petra, the Acropolis Rock, was named because of the birds do not fly over it. It's a hub of constant energy and the center of a network that spans the length and breadth of the European, Near Asian, and Northern African worlds. The shape of the Parthenon and the imperceptibility convex design of its members accumulates and releases this energy on the ground and in the ether. Whether one is receptive to its assumption is entirely subjective. The objective is what has been happening for thousands of years. No birds fly over the Parthenon. This is by Marianas, and it's translated for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.